Yes, we're here at the Dallas International Film Festival with who I consider one of the most premier actors out there, Mr. Isaiah Washington, and his new film, Corsicana. It's a privilege and an honor to interview this gentleman because of his craft, because of his integrity. Welcome to Dallas,
Thank you.
Isaiah.
Thank you, Lance.
What gave you the idea of making this particular film?
Actually, I look at it as a godsend. I actually didn't come into this particular property as a director. I actually initially came in as an actor to portray Bass Reeves with the original director at the time. And actually, Robert Davi,
Yeah.
character actor out there, introduced me to that person and said, "Look, man, we think you'll be a great Bass Reeves in this wonderful film called Corsicana." And me, I put the cart before the horse. I just jumped in because I didn't know who Bass Reeves was.
Okay.
And I didn't know where Corsicana was.
Okay.
So for 22 days, I did this deep dive in research on Bass Reeves and Corsicana and was going, I'm just disturbed that I don't know these histories and I'm from Texas. Like, why? You know, I was more perturbed about the lack of public school education that I got about my own Texas history. And that this individual had spent time in Texas and finished his career in Paris, Texas. Why don't I know this? And up to that point, in those 22 days, I finally just agreed to get on a plane and come to this place called Corsicana. Still didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And 5 days of sitting in a hotel. We had a really bad hurricane that year.
Okay.
And having multiple conversations with other producers and lightning storms and trying to figure out what the next move was. Next thing I know, I'm directing the thing.
Wow, wow. Well, you know, I always look at things, greatness is
Right.
contagious, and the contagious is getting involved. Okay.
I fell in love, and I was having a conversation with my fellow producer in the car, and I said, you know, when I met my wife 26 years ago, I didn't like her, because I knew she was my wife. I was like, I'm not going to be with anybody else, man. That was just disturbing. Man. I'm like, this is it for the rest of my life. And that's kind of how I felt about falling into this space. I fell in love with the kids that were running away from the hurricane and coming to Corsicana for refuge. I fell in love with the quietness. I fell in love with the humidity again. I fell in love with all of the landscapes that I grew up with and that I was accustomed with. And actually, it was right before the major or during the pandemic. So I'm proud to say that Corsicana was the only film that actually completed itself and didn't shut down because of the pandemic. And quite frankly, I felt a responsibility and a generous spirit in me. It's like, if I leave, then that means 40 people here are not going to have jobs.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, hey, I have a vision of how I would like to see this story. I have something to say, being back home.
Right.
And when you see the movie, you see that I love trees. You know, I raise bonsais myself personally, so I'm a huge fan of nature and how we are moving it. It seems like we're the only species on the planet that just doesn't understand our purpose.
Right.
We just don't get along. A rose is a rose, a daffodil is a daffodil, an orchid is an orchid.
Yeah.
A juniper tree is a juniper tree, an oak tree is an oak tree, but human beings, we just can't just be one human being to understand what our purpose is. But yet, we seem like we're the one species that hasn't been on this earth, which is 4 billion years old. We've been here the least amount of time and seem to be mucking up things more than any other tree or any other animal or any other wildlife I've ever seen. So I really wanted to, really have something to say in addition to branding Corsicana and branding this legendary hero, the Southwest, one of many deputy U.S. Marshals who happens to be African American. But I wanted a bigger story, is to see how small we are. Because when you're in an airplane 35,000 feet up in the air,
Right.
and you look down,
Right.
and they say jump out without a parachute, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Definitely.
And nature is going to win out. So that was really my bigger feeling about this film, and I'm just curious to see, tonight and in the future when we finally get up and running and really have that buyer and see it for what it is, and go, oh,
Yeah.
I dare to want people to think when they watch that movie. How dare I?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
I
That's
actually want you to participate in this movie because Corsicana is special. The history of, I mean, there would be no Exxon Mobil if it weren't for Corsicana, an oil boom. I didn't know that,
right.
you know, and the gas prices now is on people's mind.
Yes.
So to know where this thing that we say we need so much, where did it start? And hopefully it would, of course, kind of would open up a lot of dialogue and conversation, and hopefully people would just start Googling,
Right. Right.
a lot more about Corsicana and its history and Bass Reeves. So
Right.
that's pretty much my goal, and we're gonna find out real quick in a few hours if I was on track.
Right. Well, I tell you this, I have always been a big fan. I always looked at you as an actor who had integrity and stood for something. So I'm very excited to see this film and other films as well. And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And guys, you got to come out once the movie is premiered. Hit it up. Do what we have to do. We need to invest in brothers like Brother Washington. So in the meantime, the Dallas International Film Festival is happening at the Alamo Theater Draft House Cedars. Come out, support this brother so he can do other films on this same scale. Thank you so much, Mr. Washington.
And the biggest way you can support me and all the producers and everyone involved with this other film on social media is hashtag Corsicana movie. That would be very helpful. Hashtag Corsicana movie. Whatever you're saying, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, doesn't matter. Just put hashtag Corsicana movie. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys.
Yeah.